All right, 7 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. Good evening and welcome to this Tuesday, September 6th, 2022 meeting of the Raymore Planning and Zoning Commission. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll move into roll call. Looks like Commissioner Bowie is absent. Commissioner Ingert?
Present.
Commissioner Faulkner?
Present.
Vice Chair Fizer?
Present.
Commissioner Manser?
Present.
Secretary Peterman?
Present.
Commissioner Urquilla?
Present.
Mayor Turnbow?
Present.
And Chairman Wiggins is here. We have no scheduled personal appearances for this evening, so we'll move into our item number 5, the consent agenda, approval of minutes from the August 2nd, 2022 meeting. Any discussion on the item, or I would entertain a motion to dispose of the item, please?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I move that we accept consent agenda. Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Faulkner, second by Commissioner Manser to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion on the topic? All in favor? All opposed? And abstentions? Since I was gone last time, thank you. So 701 for the record. And
Who abstained?
I did.
Oh,
I was gone last meeting.
you're right.
We have no unfinished business, so that will take us into new business. We have
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
could I make a motion, please? I'd like to make a motion that we move item B up in the agenda for first item consideration, given that the CIP program might be a little lengthy, and I think we have one person in the audience for item B and waiting for the results there. So that'd be my motion.
I'll second.
Very good. I've got a motion by Mayor Turnbow, second by Commissioner Urquilla to move item B up to become item A. Any discussion of the topic? I think that does definitely make sense. I agree. All in favor of the motion, please. That will pass unanimously 8-0, so we'll move that through. So new business, the new order will be item A, case 18022, Timber Trails third plat, final plat. That will now be our first item of new business. And with that, I would welcome the applicant to please come forward to present your case.
I'm Brad Kempf with Clayton Property Group, DBA Summit Homes. I'm here to answer any questions on the final plat. It's similar to what the preliminary plat was. There's not really any changes, so no presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Here for questions.
Anybody have any questions for the candidate at this moment? If not, I would turn it over to staff, please.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. Tonight you have in front of you the applicant, Clayton Properties Group. The property located is east of Dean Avenue and south of Johnson Drive. Current zoning for this property is R1P and has been since 2004, as well as the preliminary plat when it was approved in 2004. The most recent thing to highlight within the area was City Council approving the preliminary plat for the Alera project, and that was back in April of this year. A couple things to highlight just real quick. You'll see that a final plat has a case number of 18022. This was placed on hold quite some time ago, and the staff didn't feel that it was necessary to start over with a whole new case number as it's the exact same project. We were just waiting on the revisions. Another thing to point out is the original preliminary plat approved for 38 lots, and this is actually proposing the same 38 lots. Timber Trails was approved by City of Raymore in 2004 and has been developed in phases over time. This would be the third phase, and staff recommends or submits the staff proposed findings of fact and recommends approval of Timber Trails third. I'll yield for any questions.
Thank you, sir. Do any members of the commission have any questions? Yes, sir. Mr. Faulkner.
Just one. Probably start with staff. So there is what appears to be a vacant area to the north, trees and so forth, and I think the trail cuts through there. What is the status of that just south of Johnston Parkway?
So that's currently still under the ownership of Hunt Midwest. One of the things that we had to do on an administrative side was with this preliminary plat, there was I would say a 10-foot or 15-foot variance, so they had to actually come back and clean that line up. But that's still currently under private ownership and not associated with the city. However, that was part of the original parkland dedication with this was all approved.
Okay, so will it be transferred to the city? Should it be transferred as this, or is there any further development?
So through our conversations with our Parks Department, it would not be the preference to take this over. One of the things that was kind of the determining factor was that when Johnston Drive was constructed, a lot of the spoilings and things were built up on that property, and so it's not a desirable part to develop a parkland there.
Okay, final question, I think. So if it's still owned by Hunt Midwest, could they come back, or someone buying the property from them, and want to develop that as additional homes?
I mean, I would say theoretically, yes, they could. I mean, they're going to find through soil samples and things, it could be difficult, but yeah, they could.
Okay, just, it worries me that we're leaving a loose end there, and especially, and I haven't found it, I thought I had seen some brief mention about an older parkland dedication. So it sounds like we're leaving a loose end. Mr. Zur, care to add?
I would agree that the property is a vacant property at this time, and as long as it's under the ownership of Hunt Midwest, they could essentially come back in order to have it replatted into lots if they're inclined to do so. I don't know the answer with regard to the requirement for the parkland dedication, whether or not that's sufficiently provided elsewhere as opposed to here.
It's just, I don't know, that concerns me.
Any other commissioners have any questions for the applicant or staff? Or any final comments on the leftover piece? Okay. Yes, sir. Commissioner Arquilla?
Yeah, I mean, just piggybacking on that for clarification, if we normally require some sort of parkland dedication or a fee in lieu of, if this is not going to be taken by Park and Rec, would we then flip back and ask for a fee? Or how would we want to proceed with those pieces so that we,
It absolutely has to be one or the other, sir.
okay. So even if they dedicate land and the park says we don't want it, then they would have to pay the fee even though they were trying to dedicate the land?
Correct. The park board 2 years ago had a meeting with Mr. Kraft, Mr. Zur, Mr. Mustine, because there had been a history of taking undesirable pieces of property that turned into a lineal park system that is virtually unusable in some areas of the city, underwater in other areas of the city after heavy rains. And so they made a determination that they were going to do a lot more due diligence before they would take a property. As Mr. Eppert has indicated this evening, this piece of property was used for a considerable amount of spoilage for the rest of the development, and is geographically a drop as well, and so they determined that it would not be a good spot to be putting a park at this time.
Any additional questions or comments? If not, I would entertain a motion to dispose of the item.
Well, I'll make a motion.
Yes, Vice Chair Pfizer.
I will recommend that We accept the staff proposed findings of fact in forward case 18022 Timber Trails third final plat to the City Council with a recommendation of approval.
I'll second that.
So I have a motion by Vice Chair Pfizer, second by Mayor Turnbow, to, accept the staff proposed findings of fact in forward case number 18022 Timber Trails third final plat to the City Council with a recommendation of approval. Any discussion of the topic, please?
Yeah, I've got another follow-up question.
Yes, sir,
Sorry.
Mr. Urquilla.
So on that undeveloped land that they still own, they would be required to maintain that?
In all likelihood, it's going to become HOA common area. It'll be transferred to the association, requirement for them to maintain it in either its current condition or any improved condition that the HOA is inclined to be able to put on it.
So then the HOA could kind of do with it as it,
It will not be,
Sees-
it will not be city responsibility.
okay.
And to piggyback on that, the property owner to date has been, I don't want to say manicuring the area, but has been maintaining the area.
Thank you.
Any final discussion of the topic? If not, we'll take a vote. All in favor? Seeing all hands, that will pass. 8-0. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I apologize. No. Sorry. Once again, I apologize. All in favor? Very good. Okay. Opposed? Thank you, sir. I apologize for that again. And there would be no abstentions, so that will pass 7-1. Sorry about that. All right. Yes, absolutely. You can have the opportunity to discuss your no vote if
Yes.
you'd like.
Just briefly, I'm simply voting against approving this plat because I don't know where we've got another opportunity to get our hands around that vacant tract, and I don't feel comfortable leaving it just sort of floating in the wind. But thank you for the explanation, Mr. Zer.
Thank you, sir. So with our readjusted agenda, we will now move to case 22023, fiscal year 2023 to 2027 capital improvement program. This does involve a public hearing, so I will open it at this time. And to make sure I got my processes in place. Would invite the applicant, which would be us, the city, to please come forward and present the CIP.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, in accordance with state statute and City of Raymore Code and the UDC, we present the 2023-2027 capital improvement program for your consideration this evening. Before I get started, do want to introduce a couple of new faces to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Sitting all the way down on the right here is Mr. Ryan Murdoch, who has taken Mr. Mike Eakey's place as Assistant City Manager. Planning and Zoning Commission will remember that normally the Assistant City Manager makes this presentation, but Mr. Murdoch's a little tender yet, so I decided I'd fill in for him tonight and still make the presentation to the council at a later time. The second new face before you this evening is actually Mr. Zer. Mr. Zer worked at Santa Calagon over the weekend, all 3 days, so he's actually a changed man at this point this evening. As you all know, the CIP is actually a 5-year program. The primary component of the CIP is always the next fiscal year, which we consider to be the capital program and the capital summary. That's how we always present it, just that 1 year, because the out years, with the exception of recurring expenses and recurring programs, are subject to change in any given year of the CIP. So with that being said, I will, for the most part, be following along with page 10, which is the summary page that's in front of you here. I cut away from that occasionally because there are some combined, this is by fund source, and there are some projects that actually overlap into 2 funds. So it's a little out of place in some components. I also will be giving you the page number of the detail sheet for each of the projects that I'm going to be discussing It's my understanding that there's a little bit of a glitch on your computers this evening, so there may be a lot of scrolling associated with that if you try to follow on the detail sheets. So you might want to just stick with the summary sheet and let me give you the detail. So just starting to run through the capital program for next year. First item on our list is the server replacement program at $15,000 per year. It's going to be a recurring cost program. It's out of the Building and Equipment Replacement Fund. It is on page 18 of the packet in detail form. This particular project is going to allow for a dedicated fund, the Building and Equipment Replacement Fund, to replace our servers on a recurring or on an annual basis on a 5-year program. 2 servers in each of the 5 years, then just start over again. Before that, we were kind of waiting until they'd reached the end of their useful life, which was sooner than later, and we ended up with spikes when they were given out. We like to avoid those spikes in all of our recurring cost maintenance programs. So because this is now coming out of the capital fund, it is included annually in the CIP. Second item, video streaming servers, $34,032. As we continue to expand our parks system, it becomes necessary. All of our parks have video camera service to them, and those video cameras are monitored on a 24/7 basis in our dispatch center. The cameras that are at those 2 locations tend to get a little glitchy because the servers there are actually overloaded. So this program includes adding servers just to serve those 2 areas, Hawk Ridge Park and at the Raymore Activity Center. So those cameras can be picked up down in dispatch. Third item on your list is finally, after many years, the inclusion in next year's capital program of Dog Park. Dog Park is slated to be located at the northwest corner of Madison and 163rd Street, basically east of the Creekmore Clubhouse, all the way down to Madison. The land is a parkland dedication being done by the developer of the Parkside development, interestingly enough, on the south side of the street of 163rd Street. And then you jump across 163rd Street to that agriculturally zoned land now. It's going to be a very, very large dog park. As a matter of fact, it'll be one of the largest in the area. It's going to include a number of amenities, possibly even a playground out there. Cost is coming out of 2 funds. Park Fee and Lieu Fund, $103,200 out of Park Fee and Lieu, and $350,000 out of park sales tax, for a total cost on that of $453,200. Again, that is just to add the amenities because the land is being dedicated to us. Fourth item on your list is the annual curb replacement program, which you see each year. We have once again this year increased the funding for this particular program. It comes out of 2 funds, $424,000 out of the Transportation Fund and $212,000 out of the Stormwater Fund, for a total project funding of $636,000. That will get us approximately 18,000 feet of curb. Engineering actually rates all of the curbs in the city. They have just now finished it. The city is divided into 3 quadrants. They rate it every 2 years, and of course, some curb that would have been there is now inserted because it's got a worse rating than it did 2 years ago. We kind of address that in the exact same way that we address street preservation with that 2-year rating system, to make sure that we try to stay on top of that particular item. As I've said to the Planning and Zoning Commission in years past, we will never be done with curbs in the city of Raymore. It's going to be a forever project. The annual street preservation program, it comes right behind that, $848,000, all out of the Transportation Fund. That is on page 68. That's also, as I just stated, the streets are also rated every 2 years. They're in the process of doing that now. The curbs that are going to be on the 2023 program and the streets that are going to be on the 2023 program will be presented to the council when the snow is flying in January. We will be bidding these two projects out. Traditionally, we bid these projects out later in the year, later in the spring, and we actually see the work being done on these in late August into September and into October, weather allowing. I want to get, and I've instructed engineering to get an earlier start on those. So we hope to be bidding everything out in March this year and beginning these projects in April and May, depending on what's going to be happening with inflation. If it continues on its current trajectory, as I will put it, that should also help us by being a little bit earlier in the year as well. Next item is right-of-way infrastructure repairs, funded out of the Transportation Fund for $159,000. It's on page 70. Over and above the sidewalk program that we have in front of the City Council and the Planning and Zoning Commission each year, the Public Works Department finds a great need for spot repairs on items in addition to sidewalks that are contained within the right-of-ways. And so this allows them that flexibility to bring me those kinds of repairs. Subsequently, if they're going to be large enough, they have to go in front of the council if we're in a bidding situation. But we found in years past the need to address items that come up during the year that were unexpected. That comes out, those costs come out of this program. If we don't have any of those and we get towards the end of the program, like this component of the year, then we can always dedicate these to the sidewalk program or the curb program and increase the amount of work that's being done in those. The next item on your list is the roadside trail maintenance, $25,000 out of the Transportation Fund. As the Planning and Zoning Commission is aware, we have a number of trails now in the city that are part of the transportation infrastructure that we have here. Several years ago, we added this particular item so that we could do spot maintenance on those trails. Frankly, it's not enough, and I'm going to be addressing at the end of the CIP a program that I presented to the City Council last Monday night, and we'll talk about that at the end of the presentation. I don't want to spoil it for you all. I know everybody just hangs on the end of their seats for all of this. We have, as the next item on page 86, salt dome pad repairs, $74,200 out of the Transportation Fund. The asphalt around the salt dome, and particularly the approach to the salt dome, has deteriorated very badly in the last couple of years. Honestly, I am hoping that that $74,200 is enough. If you happen to get to page 86 at some time tonight, or you have the chance to look at it, you're going to see at the end of the approach, there's about a 5-foot wide, 2-foot deep puddle. And that puddle is always there. In fact, the picture that's in the CIP was taken at the end of that 3-week drought that we had, and there's still a puddle there. Something's going on, and that worries me. It worries Mr. Crass that once we dig all of this out, we're going to find some more, maybe having to come back to the council for some emergency repair money in addition to that. Sidewalk replacement program that the P&Z sees every year, that's on page 88, all out of the Transportation Fund. This will allow for the replacement of 1,700 feet of sidewalk. Again, like the street preservation program and the curb program, this analysis is done every 2 years with a keen eye to spots where the sidewalk has either buckled or heaved and does not allow for us to be in compliance with ADA standards. Specifically, a lip is created that causes problems. The mayor can attest to the fact that we've had a number of folks contact us with possible future litigation due to sidewalk issues and just this. There's a lot of sidewalk in this city as well. that needs to be evaluated. Now we get into the three projects that are funded out of the GEO Bond Fund. Kurzweil Road reconstruction on page 80, $1,103,000, again out of the what's called the Transportation Sub-Fund GEO Bond. This calls for complete reconstruction of Kurzweil Road. There are a couple of spots that are going to have to be raised up, so a lot of underwork going to be done when this reconstruction occurs. It doesn't bring it up to a complete urban standard, but there will be turn lanes at the major intersections associated with that road. That road is a continual maintenance nightmare for city staff. We need to get to it and get it done once and for all. The I-49/58 highway project at $3 million is on page 82. So this is on there as a bookmark. We, for 3 years now, have been in partnership with the county, MARC, and the city of Dalton to get I-49 widened from where it chokes down to 2 lanes north of here, all the way down to North Cass Parkway. Lots of discussions on funding sources. Went to all of our state legislators at one time or another, met with a couple of them personally, their staff many times. Finally, the mayor, who is, I'm sure you all know, is now on the board of directors for MARC, approached the executive director for MARC, and during that conversation talking about I-49, it was the first time that Mr. Warm had ever heard that the citizens of Raymore, through the GEO bond issue, had actually dedicated $3 million for a project that's not even in the city, but is that important to the city. And then inform them that the county has matched that with $3 million of their own. That got his attention and got us a face-to-face meeting with the leadership from MARC and the leadership from KCATA. Mayor and I talking after that particular meeting, there was a lot of discussion with Mr. Warm, who's the executive director for MARC, on how we could combine forces and join arms and go down to Jefferson City, but it was going to take a number of different pots of money being drawn on to actually fund a project of this magnitude. And the mayor and I were talking once we got back here about the fact that the most valuable thing that came out of the meeting, and many of you have seen this in different areas, is the idea that we got discussion started at levels where decision makers could be involved in it. The next thing we knew, we turned around and MoDOT had proposed, and it has been passed, to fully fund the project themselves. $71 million, 3 lanes, both directions, all the way down to North Cass Parkway, similar to, in tearing out everything that's there, similar to the construction, you'll remember, that caused all the nightmares out on 435 for about a year. That kind of road work being done, very extensive. So the $3 million, which was voted on for a transportation project, and we have to keep it in transportation, is now there for other projects. The mayor last week approached the MARC board, thanking them once again for their support of the I-49 project, and then kind of shooting across the bow the idea of some of our newer projects that are becoming priorities, which is the 58 Highway Bridge and some sort of reconfiguration to get rid of the congestion there, and also the proposal for a flyover bridge at Lucy Webb, which came before you all at one point in time, and we actually have a great deal of support from MoDOT on that particular project. Now what we got to do is find, and the county is very interested in that, $15 million project, Mr. Krass? So we've already got 6. We just got to find the other little bit more than half on that, and I'm hoping that's a conservatively high number. As you know, I like conservatively high. Very exciting what we might be able to do here with all of these to serve the citizens of Belton and the citizens of Raymore. Mr. Mayor, would you like to add anything to that?
No, so the MARC board had received, I think, one pushback comment about the 49 widening. And what my attempt to do was to head that off when Ron Atchpole, the director of the Transportation Division, asked for input from the directors of the MARC board on any future projects. And I wanted to make sure that I got my hand up first, talked about our project, and kind of staved off anyone else on the Missouri side from asking for any consideration for a particular project, at least at an open board meeting, and I was able to do that. I was the only one that spoke for Missouri projects as part of the MARC region, but there was one project that was talked about over on the Kansas side, which shouldn't affect our pool as we move forward, although it is kind of one federal pool of money that comes to MARC for redistribution. But I'm hoping that we continue to be a priority with that by assisting in that conversation to keep us out front there. Because at that point, I don't think anybody in the room wanted to confront me with any kind of pushback for some reason. So it kind of just, it went great, actually. The conversation went great. So I was pretty excited about that.
Any questions on that one? Because it's odd to have a bookmark project that isn't going to exist in our CIP, but I wanted to keep it in there because these funds have not been drawn down yet. We've drawn down all but $5 million of the funding that we can through all of the transportation dollars. I wanted it out there in something official because I'm sure, assuming the market improves for us, that we will be going out for bonding sometime in 2023 with this project actually on the list. Hopefully by then we'll be able to turn it over with something else, one of these other projects that I know everybody wants to see.
Yeah, I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
With the funds then, where are they being held, and will they continue to be held in some sort of investment mechanism, or?
We haven't even drawn them down yet. We've had 2 draws against all of the transportation projects from the 2020 bond. We still have to go out to market and actually draw those bonds, draw that money down. So it's out there because the voters approved it, it's out there forever to be drawn down. They can't take that away, but we have to find a transportation project of that magnitude before we would go ahead and draw them down. And we always go out, I insist on a competitive sale at market. Anytime we go out for bonds, we don't just place the bonds. We always do the competitive sale. The third GeoBond project, which is actually underway, is streetlights in Heritage Hills and Silver Lake. That particular project is on page 84. It's for $1,102,000. These funds have actually been drawn down now. We've begun the project actually in Silver Lake, kind of a small one where there was at Mike, what are the 2 streets? Yeah, Lakeshore and Silver Lake Circle. And so the installation of 3 street lights there. Street lights are very expensive. You can't just go plop the light in. You have to have the loop for electrical. It takes a very, very long time, and probably the item that takes the longest. Everybody wants street lights. Nobody wants a street light in their front yard. That's what it comes down to. So getting easement for the street lights is very, very difficult. Again, the 2 locations that this $1,102,000 goes to are Heritage Hills and Silver Lake. Next item on the list is maintenance of thoroughfare routes, $212,000. Excise tax fund, page 72. This particular project, we started this in 2017, and it allows us to microsurface major road sections only, thus the term the thoroughfare routes, on a 6-year cycle. We can get to all of them and microsurface them. Next item on the list is Dean Avenue Access Management. In next year, $350,000 out of the excise tax fund. It's on page 90. This $350,000 is the design costs that are going to be associated with a major project under the umbrella of Dean Avenue Access Management. Several years ago, we did a study on the traffic patterns and concerns that the city council had, really a lot of people had, relative to the Dean Avenue intersection and that area. It went all the way down Dean Avenue, went east all the way to Peace Drive. In the end, what this project is going to call for is two medians, one on 58 Highway and one on Dean. The one on 58 Highway will eliminate the full access associated with the very dangerous intersection that is Kentucky and 58 Highway, one of our #1 accident intersections in the city. And it will also create a median to not allow full access in and out at the northern driveway for Walmart, basically behind the strip center there. On the south side of that strip center, another very dangerous intersection, causes a lot of traffic problems. You all are here, you've probably seen it on a Saturday afternoon and evening. You can get up to 12 to 14 cars queuing to make a left turn out of there, and there's no room. That won't be allowed now. That will be coupled with the installation of a stoplight where the main drive off of Dean Avenue goes all the way into the front doors of Lowe's. That's about halfway north-south in the Walmart parking lot, if you can visualize that. There'll be a cutout there into the Walmart parking lot. They're working very, very well with us on that. It'll probably be the 15th or 16th time they've repainted the parking lot to allow for this, but it'll basically be a very, very nice 4-way stoplight that's going to be installed there. Allow for very, very good access management into both of those locations and a lot safer and a lot better traffic management in there. And then, so all of that's combined. Engineering work and study work gets done next year. The following year, the project actually goes into place. So you would be seeing all of that being done in 2024. Next item on the list is curb ramp repair and replacement, $132,500. And that's going to be, like the curb replacement, this is going to be an annual program for a while. What this calls for is the ADA ramps at the end of the sidewalks that go down into the street. They are in very, very bad condition for a number of reasons. A lot of them, you may have seen the bricks. If we used regular bricks, those bricks have sunk. A lot of the curbs, the trucks just pull over that because it's a ramp. And so traffic actually drives up on them. So we're seeing a lot of crumbling in some of them. They are in very, very dire need of repair. 2 years ago, we actually had 2 interns, did a very good job of actually inventorying every single one of these ramps in the city. We can go to them digitally, and just like Street Pres and all of these other programs, we're ranking them each year and dedicating this amount of funding to getting those ramps back into a good state of repair. We started that program last year by going after what Mr. Krass always refers to as the low-hanging fruit, which was ones that it was just the concrete and there was no bubble pad there. So we're actually able this year to at least get a bubble pad in each of the spots where there's concrete. And if the concrete isn't in good repair, replacing that concrete at the same time we do that this year. Next item on your list on page 28.
Jim,
Yes.
real quick, you mentioned the brick. Were you referring to the brick like right out here that like, did that sink and that's why we took it out and put concrete back in, or?
Similar. Let's use that kind of as an example. Yeah, it's sunk. In this case, the ramps have been upgraded in this day and age to it's actually a mat that glues down onto the concrete. Before they had those, it was actually bricks, just like what was out here, and just like what happened here, they sunk. So they're gonna have to figure out that when they replace it, they'll go back with concrete, just like here, and then they'll go with the bubble mat, if you will, and have that adhered to the concrete. And out here, there's actually going to be porous mat laid on top, just like what you see going into Centerview. That's what you're gonna see out here on that particular strip. And with the concrete there now, we hope it doesn't sink. That's gonna be a big sink.
Commissioner, sorry, the page 79 shows the single mat piece versus like the,
Oh, no, I knew what he meant there. He mentioned the sinking, it triggered right here at the stoplight where I remember you took it out and
understood.
put brick in, and then it was about maybe a year later, we
This one
took the
was,
brick out and.
well, the company did, we didn't that time. We think what's happening at this particular one that's unique compared to the others is you're getting the fueling trucks pulling out and making the hard ride onto 58. So there's the whole side, that east side of it is what actually sunk there.
Gotcha.
So any other questions on that one? Terrific. Next item on your list is the Centerview Sound System Upgrade, $10,000 out of the Capital Improvement Fund. That's on page 28. If any of you were at the community conversation a few weeks ago, you know about the Centerview. If you've been to any presentation there, you know about the Centerview Sound System. If you're not right here on the microphone, you can't be heard. In fact, you almost have to swallow the microphone to be heard. They've identified a number of problems that are associated with that, but the gain in the room has to be was programmed for the lavalier clip-on mics, which you can be heard perfectly on. Nobody uses those. Everybody likes to have the mic in their hand or mounted on the podium. So we've had to reset the entire system to those. It's a little bit better, but there's still work to be done. And now I'm worried if anybody goes in there and needs the lavalier mic, those don't work at all now. It's a good and unique problem to have. The folks from Bose, which is all those speakers, actually came in and programmed that entire system for us themselves. But it is unique when you have that many speakers pointing straight down onto a concrete floor. You get some strange things happen with the sound. Next item on the list is the mayor's Christmas tree at $35,990 out of the Capital Improvement Fund. The mayor's Christmas tree that is located over at TB Hanna and not the one in his living room has fallen into, it has definitely reached the end of its useful life. This past year, 2 years ago, it was the mayor and I only because of COVID out there in the dark. And to actually turn it on, two of the workers from the company actually were up in the tree turning things on as he hit the imaginary switch outside. That was the only way we could get it to go on. They fixed it a little bit, but it has rusted out over the years, kind of become a little bit dangerous. So this calls for the $35,990 to replace that tree. Huge attraction for the city. Next item on your list is the Johnson Lake Dam Study at $30,000. It's on page 58. Stormwater Sales Tax Fund. I am very glad to finally be able to bring this to the P&Z and subsequently to the council for you all's consideration. We sometimes lose sight of the fact that we have dams in the city, and you all have heard of instances in other locations in the United States where out of the clear blue, these dams give out. And we need to, and I need to be prepared for the fact that it's time to do this study, and we also need to be prepared for the results of the study because we may have to be doing things to the dam. We hope not, but that may come. It does call for the inspection, flood mapping should it happen to give out, breach analysis, and safety inspection on the dam itself. Again, that one is very, very necessary, I feel, and it's $30,000. Next item on your list is the Hunters Glen storm repairs, $424,000 out of Stormwater Sales Tax Fund. Page 60 of your packet. This calls for stormwater infrastructure and reconstruction in Hunters Glen, and specifically between Oak and Redwood. A lot of the stormwater infrastructure that is in there has deteriorated, and it is not working at optimum levels to the city. So we need to go in there on a more holistic basis and get all of that replaced. Next item on your list is disc golf course relocation, $51,000 out of the Park Sales Tax Fund. This is on page 31. This is actually due to the geobond work that is being done. We're going to be doubling the size of the activity center. It's going to be doubling in size towards the west-southwest. So the side that you actually see the Raymore Activity Center logo on, that whole wall was made to come out and double the size of that. Overwhelmingly, the most talked about GeoBond project for parks when we were going for that particular item on the ballot. The work, unfortunately, eats into and causes the need for reconstruction of all 18 holes of the disc golf course. If anybody would have told me when the disc golf course first got approved that it was going to be as wildly popular as it is, there is always somebody using that disc golf course down there. So we need to allow for it. We need to keep it. It's a great attraction. People from all over the metro come out to use this one. We want to make sure that we get it done right so it continues to be a challenging course for these folks, so they continue to come out here and use our amenities.
Jim, what is the plan when you say redo? Like, are you just, because with what you're describing, it only affects really one hole.
Apparently, the trickle down from that is it's actually going to be relocation of all 18 holes. So they're having,
Crazy.
don't even ask me, but I know it goes all the way over into Moon Valley if you haven't had the opportunity to play that particular challenging
I play it all
course.
the time, which is why I'm curious why we would need to redo all 18.
That one you're going to have to take up with the park board. I know that they have gone back to the person who originally
designed it.
laid out that particular item, and he has indicated that if you're going to do it and you're going to do it right, they're all going to have to be relocated, some of them to a lesser degree than others.
Okay.
Sanitary sewer inflow and infiltration. Oh, and part of it too is the trail system has to be reconfigured out there as well because of the rack, and I know that that is directly impacting another two of them, is what Mr. Mustine has indicated to me.
Yeah, I mean, the new
last week at
paths,
some
the new
point.
paths do impact a couple of the holes, but it just kind of creates an added challenge as opposed to, I mean, the only thing you deal with is people walking on it. I will say that there are
Sure.
a lot more just walkers on the paths that do create an obstacle for people playing. So I guess if that has less to do with the rack and more to do with the paths, but okay. Gotcha.
Next item on your list is the annual sanitary sewer and inflow and infiltration reduction program. $147,514 out of the Enterprise Capital Maintenance Fund. This is on page 48 of the packet. As the Planning and Zoning Commission is very well aware, calls for relining sewer mains and sealing manholes to eliminate infiltration into the sanitary sewer system. I hope this one isn't going to be like curbs, but I'm starting to feel like it might be, and this is just going to be something that we're going to see every single year. We're a growing city. We're going to, as these things continue to happen, and this is an area that has a great deal of wear and tear put on it. We certainly want to keep after this because, again, as the mayor can attest to, Little Blue Valley right now and shortly Middle Big Creek will both be charging us based on flow. So the amount the amount of work that we can do to reduce the flow that's going to those two locations ends up paying for itself in the long run. So we want to reduce that I&I as much as possible every single year. Next item on your list is the hydrant replacement program. Hydrant replacement program is $161,983, again out of the Enterprise Capital Maintenance Fund. It's on page 96. Like everything else, the hydrants give out as well. This is a little bit more serious when they really give out, so they also get monitored each year. This will be an ongoing program for several years until we get them replaced out. Next item on your list is the Mayberry Court water line replacement, $100,700, Enterprise Capital Maintenance Fund, page 98. Calls for a replacement of the water line on Mayberry Court, starting on the south side of Yoakley Drive. We have had, in the last 12 months, 2 water main breaks there. For about a 4-week period, it felt like we were living there. Got to know everybody by their first names. So Mr. Kraft proposed that we just simply go down there and fix the problem once and for all. And I would add, because it's court, when we're down there and we're replacing water mains on that particular location, it's a tremendous disruption to the people who live there. So we just want to get it taken care of once and for all. Last item on our list this evening is the Original Town Valve Installation Project, $74,200. Again, out of the Enterprise Capital Maintenance Fund. It's on page 100 of the packet. Calls for additional valves to limit service disruptions in the Original Town area of Raymore. For those of you who can remember it, I remember it distinctly. When we had the water main break on 58 right in front of Silver Lake Dentistry, it took hours to locate the valves to shut the water off on there. And tremendous disruption. All of our guys kind of having to stand around waiting while 2 of our public works guys frantically scrambled around trying to figure out where to turn the water off. That happens a lot in Original Town. So the program not only calls for locating those and getting them mapped ahead of time, but also installing more valves down there to make sure that if we have a service disruption, we can get out there and get those things turned back on as soon as possible. Not part of the CIP, but in conjunction with the street maintenance program, would like to talk with the Planning and Zoning Commission about what I spoke with them and made a recommendation on, kind of in conjunction with the CIP last Monday night. The City Council every single year has, in the general fund, restricted fund balance that's being projected at the end of the year in the amount of 20% of the expenses that are projected for the year. And then over and above that is what we define as available fund balance, available above the restricted fund balance for the council to make a determination on what they're going to do with those funds. That particular amount projected for the end of fiscal year 2023 is $3,357,298. The council asks me every year, how much would I be comfortable spending down on that? And I always tell them I'd really like it if you kept $3,357,298, but that amount is technically defined by GFOA as languishing funds. If they are going to spend them, however, spend them on one-time capital projects or something that could be defined within that realm. I told them $1 million to $1.5 million left in the available fund balance would keep the city manager comfortable. So they got $2.5 million to make a determination on with that. In consultation with the mayor, I made a recommendation to the council that does involve a couple of the projects that I just spoke to you about tonight. I recommended that they take $1 million of that $2 to $2.5 million and place it in the restricted revenue fund, and then begin a 5-year program where of that $1 million that they've placed in the restricted revenue fund, $200,000 come out in each of the next 5 years, coupled with $200,000 coming out and being transferred into the transportation fund, both of those amounts, in each of the next 5 years from the capital improvement fund, and $100,000 in each of the next 5 years coming out of the excise tax fund and being transferred into the transportation fund, for a total in each of the next 5 years of $500,000, and then supplementing the curb replacement program and the street preservation program with $250,000 each in each of those programs, would push both when you combine all of the other funds and things like maintenance of thoroughfare routes, would push both of those well over $1 million in work being done next year and in each of the next 5 years, as long as we can continue to fund up those programs in the baseline to what I gave you all tonight. What that would mean is at the end of 5 years, and all of those funds can sustain that, but again, it's anchored by the transfer out of the general fund available fund balance, would mean a commitment on the part of the council of $1,250,000 over that 5-year period to street preservation, and the same amount for curb replacement in addition to what's already there. In addition to that, that paltry $25,000 that I talked with you all about within the CIP tonight, be sub for trails maintenance on a spot program, that we actually subject the trails to the same rating system that we use for street preservation every 2 years, and that out of the capital improvement fund, because it can sustain this for 5 years, that the council make a 5-year commitment of $150,000 in each of those years strictly for trails maintenance. And it needs it. So that would be a $750,000 commitment to trails maintenance over the next 5 years. Again, anchored by the transfer from available fund balance, but having a huge impact on the CIP program, supplementing the CIP program that I had proposed to you all this evening. Not anything that you would be voting on tonight, because the council hasn't had the opportunity to formally tell me to include it in next year's budget. But again, it comes with a strong staff recommendation and commitment to the infrastructure of the city. So I just want to let you all know about that. And with that very, very lengthy report, Mr. Chair, I conclude the staff report and would welcome any questions.
Thank you, sir. Do any members of the commission have any questions for our city manager? Yes, sir. Mr. Faulkner.
Just a couple. So I'm in the paper copy, page 41, I think is one of the 2 pages, proposing to convert the skate park to additional 75 parking spaces. And my question was simply, so what happens with the skate park? Will we still have a new one, or is it just gone?
The skate park is being moved over by where the old park house was.
Oh, okay, okay.
And that is actually being done in this year.
I remember a reference about the old park house, but somehow I missed the,
And the skate park is also being proposed in 2 different fiscal years. It's going to be much larger.
okay.
I was out at the skate park 2 Sundays ago with my grandsons in 95-degree heat. Felt like a lobster. The skate park is in need of being torn out. It's starting to get into not good repair.
Okay, thank you. The other question, the streetlight project, page 85, for instance, and I may have asked this last year, but I don't remember Mr. Krass's answer. Are we doing all LED streetlights now, or do you know?
Thank you, Mike.
That was a yes?
I was trying to figure out if there's any areas that are being proposed where that couldn't be done, but those would be individual HOAs replacing it on their own, but all of our new ones are LED.
Okay. Hopefully that'll reduce operating costs some.
We hope so, sir.
Yeah, thank you. That was all.
I've got a quick question, which maybe doesn't really apply to this. Maybe it kind of does with the streetlight question. A lot of the recent streetlights that have been installed in Raymore, but also I've noticed in other parts of Kansas City, are blue, or maybe the ultra white kind of thing. Do we know, was that a manufacturer defect issue? Is that how streetlights nowadays, like if you drive through Creekmore, Mr. Krass's shirt is about the color of the streetlights on the newer parts of the neighborhood. And I know Kansas City, Missouri, for instance, has some up on 71 around the plaza area, but I didn't know, should we expect that going forward, or was that a weird issue as far as LEDs due to COVID?
I believe it's the LEDs.
So they're going to continue to, because I've seen other areas where LED lights are white, but these are like a purplish blue, which is kind of odd.
Mr. Krass, do you have anything to add on that?
Gotcha. I just didn't know if it was an issue and those would be, the blue would be replaced or not, because it's, if you drive through Creekmore Drive down kind of towards the new part, it's, sure, very good. All right, that was just, like I said, kind of a random question, so. Awesome. Any other commissioners have questions regarding the CIP? Sir, Mr.
Start date and date for Kurzweil.
As soon as possible.
I do not believe that Kurzweil, I am going to hope that Kurzweil's start date is before early fall, which means it's probably going to be, Mr. Krass, would you anticipate being able to be done before weather in 2023? And there's our problem. As soon as we can move on Ward Road, the schedule calls for Ward Road first, and we have, with Ward Road, we have a partnership with the county, so they're asking every day as well. We are I knew you were going to do that. We are currently in discussions with the property owners on Ward Road. Approximately 15 of the property owners on Ward Road that will possibly have to go to the circuit court.
Any final questions? Any other members of staff have anything to add to that? Perfect. Since this does require a public hearing, which we did open at 7:12, I will ask if any members of the public are waiting in the wings, would like to come forward and comment or say anything. I welcome at this time. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. It's 8:04. And with that, any final discussion of the topic or questions for the city staff? Otherwise, I would suppose that we probably need a motion to dispose of this item, which I would entertain.
Are we just looking for a recommendation of approval of the CIP?
Motion to accept.
Motion to accept the CIP as presented?
And recommend on to the city council.
Okay.
I will go ahead and make a motion to accept the CIP as presented by Mr. Fearborn this evening and recommend it be forwarded to the city council with our approval? Or with our recommendation for approval?
I'll second.
All right, I have a, let's see how I can do this. A motion by Commissioner Arquilla, second by Secretary Peterman to accept as presented the case 22023 fiscal year 2023 to 2027 capital improvement program and send to City Council with a recommendation of approval. Any final discussion of the topic? All in favor? Make sure I have all my hands this time. And that will pass 8-0.
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. That will take us to our final item of new business, item C, the annual review of the Unified Development Code, which I would assume goes to staff, please.
Thank you, sir. As part of the annual review, obviously, the last time we came before you, it was in around this time last year. A couple months a little late. We generally do this in June as well, but we've had obviously some transitions within the department, and so this was the best time to be able to get this in front of you. To draw back a little bit on the history, back in December, there were 3 items, I believe, that we discussed, and that was regarding the sign code, the floodplain, and then just approval of minor subdivisions as far as an administrative, as opposed to taking it in front of P&Z and City Council. Tonight we have 6 topics to discuss. The first 3 that I'm going to go through are just fairly clerical, and I'll pause after that. And then I'll pause after each discussion after that, just to make sure we're all on the same page. The first one is regarding above-ground facility requirements. This came about as there was some utility work that was being done on Fox Ridge in the Eagle Glen subdivision, and they did not exceed, or with the way our current code reads now, it deals with commercial or multifamily development, and not overall just a residential. And so we wanted to add in residential for the screen requirements, because as of right now, if you were to drive out there, there's no screening required for that, as it just goes through a single family neighborhood, and wanted to clean that up and make sure that if this were to happen again, that there would be screening that would be required. The second one is regarding pools. Currently, right now, if you wanted to build a pool, you have to have a fence as a barrier. Right now, our code reads that the gate must open outward, and what our building official was finding that when they were doing the inspections, topography or location of the pool was prohibiting that from occurring, and so changing that language to be inward or outward as opposed to just outward. Finally, it will be site trees. Right now, as long as you're putting a tree for a newly built home, the way it reads is that you have to have 1 tree or 2 on a corner lot. It must be in the front yard. Well, it doesn't delineate not in the right of way, and so we're adding that language in there to not have further issues down the road on whose tree it is, whether it's the city's or if it's the property owners. And so for that, I will pause and see if there's anything.
Just a quick comment, question, if you would double check this along the way. So item 1 there calls it section 420.030 D3A, and my book might be out of date, but I've got it as 420.040.
You are correct, sir. That is 040
Okay,
D3. Yes, sir.
so when we see it again,
Yes.
okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Just for clarification, regarding site trees, no tree shall be located within the right-of-way. Can you just remind me again what we define our right-of-way? Is that 10 feet of a
11
yard?
feet.
11 feet, and then that does not include the utility right-of-way, which then is an extra 15 feet?
Right. There's build lines, but that ultimately just it just describes where the principal structure is to be located. That utility could sometimes be in the rear, or it just depends
Sure.
on the locations.
Okay.
And on that same topic, is it just trees, or is there any reason we would want to specify bushes as well? Or is there a reason we say it's just trees in this situation?
At this point, it would just be trees, as that's the requirement that we would require each home that's built have a tree, and so it does not discuss bushes or flowers or anything of that nature.
And this would also prevent them being planted in a parkway between the street and the sidewalk, which would then cause buckling issues potentially.
Correct. Yeah, there was definitely, especially out by Taco Bell right now. So that's causing that issue that we're trying to prevent.
Yes, Vice Chair.
I have a question about the item A. Is that in reference to, or in, I guess, in the answer to those big green boxes that appeared on Fox Ridge?
That's correct.
And is this retroactive then, that someone will come along and maybe make those look nicer or hide them?
We certainly wish, but no.
Okay, well, that was wishful thinking, I thought I'd ask. Okay.
Any final questions for staff on these first three items? Please.
Perfect.
The next item will be item 4, and that's the keeping of animals. It wasn't really a good spot to put this, but felt the best placement here. This would be a new item for us, as this would be all-encompassing for the keeping of bees. And so this was discussed at a city council work session, I believe in July, just kind of touching on it, seeing if there was any feelers if there was anything that needed to be discussed at that time. The 5 items that you see there, after discussing with several other cities kind of what their restrictions are and what they propose, we felt these 5 items would be the best, and have it open for more discussion if you felt there was something that was too stringent or not enough. But a couple of things, this only, it does not apply to agriculture or rural estate, anything 3 acres or above. And another thing to touch on is right now the code is silent when it comes to beekeeping, and so it's allowed. We just have no guidelines for if somebody has them, then what? We have there's nothing in the code that says what can and can't be done. And this has kind of come about on an annual basis. We get 2 or 3 calls with a couple different locations that do have bees, and so there's no direction, and this is to try and give guidance and direction for both people that have bees and neighbors that could be interacting with potential bees. And so I'll pause for that.
If we go forward with this, would it be possible to change the title for that whole section D to broaden it a little bit beyond animals?
I think we could take a look at that.
I'm getting a little hung up because I don't think bees are animals, but
Definitely more of an insect, yeah.
I get the intent.
Sure.
Intent's good. Thank
Any other bee-related questions?
So,
Sir?
historically, there's been no
no stance on the keeping of bees, right?
No, that's correct. We have not had anything come up where there hasn't been anything of direct, I guess, danger that has brought it to the attention that we needed to do something immediately. But after getting these calls consistently, this would be something to try and quail those a little bit, as well as to provide that direction so that the couple of homes that do have these bees, they know what's the expectation is.
Okay. And maybe with that should come a maximum amount of bees for?
I don't think you can really contain what bees come to a hive.
So I know right now it just gives a maximum number of hives with a max height.
Right.
And so I would assume that comes with a minimum number that would have, but as far as the regulation of number of bees, it would get.
Unless you want to go out there and start counting, you have 64,321.
It would be cumbersome.
What I meant was the number of hives, but I guess my point is maybe something should be incorporated into Part 3 of D, keeping of animals, that allows for a maximum number of hives per acre.
Well, yeah.
Okay, so we're talking if it's an agricultural piece of property or
Right.
3 acres or more. Definitely up for discussion.
I mean, I guess my question would be are we talking we have hundreds of people with bees and this is going to become an issue, or we have like 2 or 3 properties that therefore has caused this to become an issue of becoming to our commission, because this normally is probably not something.
To date, the code has been silent, which means it is entirely unregulated. So this was our first attempt at trying to get some degree of a fence around something, pardon the pun, that it's kind of impossible to get a fence around because they fly.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I think we're baby stepping into this one. So we'd like to see, do these have the impact that we're looking for? And particularly the signage, we think is going to be important. But it's certainly going to bear evaluation after the first couple of years that it's in place to see how it's working, if there's any other holes that we can possibly fill. I know that staff looked at a number of surrounding municipalities that have different codes in place and kind of modeled this after those.
I mean, I would assume that some of those other cities, if they've gone through the research process, they probably have discussed stuff with professional beekeepers or whether it's the extension office, the Missouri Ag office. And have we done anything along those lines? For me, I'm almost in favor of, encouraging people to have hives. It's obviously, bees are important for pollination purposes and they continue to die off, and we want to do everything we can to support it as opposed to limit potential. But at the same time, from a safety perspective, if people are concerned about that or a nuisance issue, I can see the importance of it. But other than looking at what other cities have in place, have we actually talked to anybody that says, somebody that actually knows something about bees more than reading some other city's site that says, hey, this is totally reasonable, or you're really restricting people and you're basically not allowing them to have something that's going to be conducive to making their own honey or helping the bee population.
Sure. Yeah, I can say that definitely our first stop was surrounding cities, but we can definitely reach out to the extensions, and actually I believe there's the 2 or 3 different properties that have bees, and so maybe reaching out to them to make sure this isn't going to cause undue burden.
Yeah.
Well, and along those lines, has there been any information on, we talk about property, but if like everybody in my neighborhood decided we all wanted to have a beehive, is that going to create an issue? If you have 4 or 5 homes on the same street that all get hives, would that create any type of?
Like an overdense.
Well, yeah, like, because then my bees are competing with your, I'm not a, I agree with you, but I'm not a bee expert, and I'm just kind of curious. And then also, what's the punishment if I don't comply with this new ordinance?
I would assume it would be similar to if you had.
It's not property maintenance. You'd get a citation. It's a property maintenance violation.
And so
you'd
just follow those. I just want to make sure that too, if we're introducing this, that people also understand what's the consequence for.
Our code enforcement officer would issue a citation for the Raymore Municipal Court. The Raymore Municipal Court would then have the ability for that person to appear before the judge. Fines would be appropriate, as well as potential jail time.
Okay.
Essentially the same for any of the items above.
Right. I just wanted to make sure that, and then the permanent posting of ownership, do we then require like them to register with the city, or they just have to post if they have a hive? Okay.
Yeah.
Please.
And Mr. Fairpoint makes note that HOAs would still be subject to this as well, so the HOAs could put prohibitions in with regard to the use of bees or keeping of bees.
Very good. Any other questions regarding the bees? All right. Please.
Okay, the last two items, which were fairly informal, we can do this fairly open. One would be the sign code, and then the other is a short-term rental for Airbnbs. When it comes to the sign code, one of the examples was kind of what would be like a feather or quill banner temporary sign that businesses have been having out. They technically can't have it, but we've been making it available for them as long as it kind of just meets the size requirement. I know there's also probably been, with this last political season, a question on how we can regulate political signs, and at this point there's none. We're unable to do that. The only way that we can do something about it is if it's in the right of way, and so that's kind of the two big things that we've occurred this year. With the Airbnbs, I think there's only a handful, maybe 6 or 7 Airbnbs in town, and so not something that is super prevalent, but trying to get ahead of this and make sure that it, try and prevent, weekend parties and those types of things, and what we can do to regulate it. I know one of the things that's kind of come up would be just home-based businesses in general, and how we can regulate those into the future. This is kind of a question mark, but definitely willing to accept any feedback. Or one thing to note would be that these two items would be separate from the 4 items before, as far as the 35th UDC amendment. This would be something additional, possibly a work session or something to discuss further.
What a question on the signs. Obviously, we have stuff in place, Chapter 435. For duration, they can be up, and then how quickly they need to come down. What do we do from a city standpoint? Do we fine somebody if there's a sign that's up post 5 days? I mean, for instance, down one of our major thoroughfares, the most recent August 2nd election ended more than 5 days ago, and there's a very large candidate who did not succeed sign posted. Is that, does the city go after the landowner? Does the city have the right to go in and physically remove signs? I realize those are probably considered personal property to somebody to a certain extent, but I mean,
we only control signage in right-of-way at this time. As far as political signs are concerned, there are ongoing legal cases involving those. We've got the most recent case law, which is going to put a substantial hindrance on the ability of homes associations as well as the municipality to impact upon anything related to sign size, content, or otherwise. The only thing I think we would be able to do is potentially location issues, which would be public health, safety, and welfare matters involving right-of-ways, visual site right-of-way issues, and things like that.
okay. So even though it's in our code that signs have to come down 5 days, we technically can't do anything about it based on what you just said. So those signs just have to sit there and fade until somebody takes them down.
So 5 years ago, the Missouri Supreme Court ruled on both content of signs and length of signs, and specifically addressed political signs. We've actually been at odds with that particular ruling for 5 years, because in each of those 5 years, the legislature has taken up the possibility of making it law on what actually you can and cannot regulate. In each of those 5 years, that has not manifested itself. So city managers around the state on our listserv have been talking about this, and most of them, now that we've passed a 5-year mark, are going to be changing code and changing their UDCs to come into compliance with what the Supreme Court did. We can't just carry this on forever. And this particular year, we were getting some challenges that what our code was saying was not in compliance with the Supreme Court's ruling. And so we had to kind of backtrack on some folks who we had said, take the sign down, and say, well, you can leave the sign up. So if somebody didn't win, but that particular property owner has no problem with that sign staying up on their property, there's not a lot we can say about that. It's also going to get probably a little bit more dicey in the next time you all see this, and what staff's going to have to be recommending to be in compliance, because you can put a whole lot on those signs that's going to cause a lot of neighborly interactions in some cases.
Missouri Municipal Attorneys Association has also had similar mirrored conversations with regard to signage, what's allowed, what's not allowed. So I would anticipate both Missouri managers, city managers, as well as Missouri Municipal Attorneys Association having to be more in-depth and making alterations to their city codes.
Does that imply whether it's word usage that could be considered vulgar to some, or imagery, or whatever the case may be?
Content-based is going to be very, very difficult. It's going to be strict scrutiny for any court determination, and so obviously you can do some things with vulgarity and pornography, but it's going to be limited.
Very interesting. Thank you for the education. All right, any other questions back to the item regarding sign code update, or, yeah. So did that take us to our last one?
So the last one will be the short-term rentals, Airbnb. I think one of the things that I would like to pose to you is just figuring out what is the definition of a short-term rental. Is it going to be a weekend, a week, 2 weeks, a month? We start talking about 3 months and 6 months, and that to me would be more short-term, but in an apartment-type setting. And so we just need to decide what exactly is a short term, and then how we want to regulate it, whether it be through a business license or through a inspection program, or there's a ton of different options out there. And so definitely just a lot of discussion to ensue in the future about this for sure.
Do we know what what our current rental properties offer as far as their shortest lease on average? Is it a 3-month? Is it a 6-month? Do we have any data on that?
I know of a couple of, I believe it was the Manor at Eagle Glen is 3 months. It's like their shortest term. And so that was one thing I didn't want to be competing with an apartment complex.
Right.
And so I believe 3 months is the shortest that I've seen.
Yeah, because I know some after your initial lease, it can go month to month, but is that initial lease that I was kind of curious about? So if it's, 3 months, then from that standpoint, an initial lease of less than, I think a month would make us, a month or less would make us, probably put us in that ballpark of safe.
Many of my HOAs are dealing at 60 days or less.
60.
That's what they're looking at for
Because
short-term.
it's less than 90, but.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense to enter into a lease agreement for that time frame less.
I would be comfortable with that time frame as well, if that's what you're looking for, is a suggestion or recommendation. I don't know. That's my thought.
You said that most HOAs are doing 60. I'm just curious, because to me, yeah.
I would not say most. The
So-
HOAs that I am dealing with that are addressing short-term rentals are looking at it from a perspective of about 60 days.
Okay. So not most. All right. I was curious if that would be 30 days in some instances. Any comments or questions in addition to Commissioner Urquia's?
And do we know if properties being advertised or rented out as Airbnbs?
They most definitely are, and they're primarily off of 58, just a couple blocks over.
And are they required to be licensed as an in-home business? Is there a reason why they're allowed to bypass that?
Now and moving forward, state law prohibits. This last legislative session, the state legislature passed into law our inability to impose any kind of restrictions, housing restrictions, land restrictions, or charge a fee to home-based businesses. And this would fall under that particular category. Stay tuned, Planning and Zoning Commission, because there's going to be a lot of items associated with that. Staff has to bring recommendations to you sometimes that we don't like having to bring to you, and that's going to be one of them.
So any home-based business will no longer be able to do anything about.
There are caveats to that staff will be presenting in the future.
To the greatest extent possible, but an example would be
I was thinking like
somebody has a detached garage in their home and they want to start a home-based business to do automotive repair in that garage in a residential neighborhood. State law will allow that.
what about like a puppy mill?
Again, staff will be reporting back to you in the future with regard to caveats that can and cannot be regulated according to the new statutes.
Does anything in there, either in this short-term rental or potential things that are coming forward, and it may not be an issue here, I think it was in Shawnee or Lenexa earlier in the year, and I think I brought it up about like the, people buying a single home and doing what room sharing, I think is maybe more along the lines of what they called it. I don't know if does that fall under something of a short-term rental? Or it might not even be an issue, so it might not be worth the time, but where people were essentially converting homes into 7 individual rental units and things along those lines.
So I know the biggest thing with that type of housing is that the building code regulates that as far as number of occupants within a home. I know that there's also some other cities that have, it's kind of a workaround, unfortunately, but if you say that you're related by blood, there's not really any way to prove otherwise.
Sure. Okay.
And so it gets very cumbersome with trying to prove those types of things.
And it's also probably not really an issue at the moment now, so no reason to worry about it too much. Any final questions?
I guess my contribution to the discussion and comments is that I would not like to see any regulations or registrations for Airbnbs. I believe the market's going to kind of help dictate if somebody's going to want to stay in one of those or not. And the people that are staying there are, they still have to obey all of our laws that we have here in Raymore. So that's kind of my contribution to the discussion.
Very good. Anything else? Do we need to have any particular motion to close out?
Just to direct staff to bring it back before you. This would be a public hearing that we would go through, and actually is I believe scheduled for the 20th if directed so.
You don't need a vote.
Sorry?
You would not need a vote for that.
Okay. Very good. Then do it.
Staff would thank you for your input.
Thank you. Awesome. All right, so then that would conclude our new business, which would take us into our city council report, which I would ask Mr. Zur or Mr. Fearborn or Mayor Turnbow.
Thank you, Chairman. I have 2 items to provide this evening. First of all, you've got 2 city council meetings that have occurred since the last Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, one on August 8th and the second one on August 22nd. At both of those, one of the meetings, the first one, you had a first reading of each of the 2 items that I'm going to report on. At the August 22nd meeting, you had the second reading and approval for both of those same items, so I'm simply going to report from the August 22nd meeting date. At that time frame, in that meeting, City Council approved unanimously the Oak Ridge Farms 4th and final plat. This was previously reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission and approved unanimously on August 2nd. And then likewise, immediately thereafter, the City Council approved unanimously the Ridgeview Estates final plat, lots 1 and 2, previously approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission on July 19th, 2022. I would note for you that the Planning and Zoning Commission approved the site plan for the Lot 1 Ridgeview Estates, which was an income-restricted senior living community at its July 19th, 2022 meeting. That's the only two things I have to report from you on. Again, both of those referenced within the agenda for August 8th as well as August 22nd. I'm happy to answer any questions, and obviously if Mr. Fearborn or Mayor Turnbow have additional input that they'd like to provide, it's welcome.
Mike Cohn, staff report, please.
Just a couple of items. We will have a meeting on September the 20th. That should consist of this 35th UDC amendment. And then there are 3 proposed final plats. One would be the Prairie Carroll Farms, and then Edgewater 8 and 9. Obviously, we're waiting on some revisions, and so those are tentative at this time. And then for October 4th, we have a rezoning application that's in Willow Wind. And so that concludes staff report.
Any other departments have any other staff report to provide?
I had a question, if I could.
Please.
So, Mike, I noticed Thursday, as I drove through late in the evening through the new traffic circle on 58, MoDOT didn't have any of the lights on yet. Have you heard back from them when they plan to light that intersection? Not have, okay. If you could, okay, thank you.
All right, that takes us to public comment. If there's anybody from the public, seeing none, we'll move on to commission member comments. I'll start on my end down here with Commissioner Manser, please.
All right. As always, huge thanks to the staff. As we were talking about the, bookmarked project at I-49, in the banking world, I think Mario can agree, we see that as kind of an unused commitment. It's something that we're committed to spending the money on and we're budgeting for, but may not be utilized right away. So I think it's great that we are budgeting for it in case it does come up, and it's part of that plan. Also wanted to pass on, I guess, some nice words to the Parks, Board and Parks Commission. There was a concert at Hawks Ridge that I had a coworker attend, and she showed me some pictures, and it was beautiful. The sun was just coming down, and I would definitely like to attend a little concert there with my little family here in the future. Again, thanks, staff.
Secretary Peterman.
Excellent report or presentation, Mr. Fearborn. My second go around on listening to that. A lot of stuff in the works. Thanks for the staff's hard work. That's all I got.
Commissioner Faulkner.
Thanks to staff, quite a few more staff this evening than usual, and we certainly appreciate your support.
Vice Chair Fizer.
Also, thanks to staff. I enjoyed hearing about the upcoming city improvements. I think that, sometimes we think, oh, sewer improvements, that's not very exciting, but if it doesn't happen, you'll hear about it. So I'm glad to see that our city takes care of us. So thank you.
Commissioner Ingert.
Thanks to the staff. Appreciated your hard work and effort and the information. I really appreciated your presentations tonight. Very informative. I found it quite fascinating to hear the information. I look at it this way from just my opinion. There was nobody here because they're happy with the way things are going. If they weren't happy, this place would be packed. So take 2 minutes, pat yourselves on the back for the hard work and effort. It shows.
Commissioner Kia.
It's because they used that secret code of UDC and people didn't know what that meant, and that's why there's no one here this evening. But no, honestly, thank you all so much for everything you do. Mr. Fearborn, appreciate your presentation. I would ask, or just kind of caveat when we do this next year, you do a wonderful job referencing the page. Is it possible just put the page in parentheses next to the item so that you don't have to, and we can know where to go in the packet to see what you're referencing? And then welcome, Mr. Murdoch. Appreciate you being here and look forward to, you giving Jim the evening. That way he can take the evening off when we do this again next time. But no, appreciate all you all do, and look forward to seeing what's to come as we move forward, both good and bad.
Mayor Turnbow.
I have nothing to add this evening. Thank you.
Just finish with thank you to the staff for everything you guys do, both from CIP perspective and then obviously everything the staff goes through to present to us and get us our packets and all this wonderful information. So thank you very much. I hope everybody had a lovely Labor Day. I believe there's only a couple more sessions of the farmers market left, so if you haven't done that, be sure to check that out. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I've got a motion by Commissioner Kia, second by Commissioner Manser to adjourn. All in favor? Without discussion, we are adjourned 8-0. Thank you. Didn't mean to miss your hand.